Now here's another situation that's a bit similar. I watched a couple, and this was still when we were on the caravan, and I thought these guys were brilliant because you know what they did for pain relief? They just kissed each other when she would have a contraction, a rush. And that made it feel real relaxed, as you can imagine. I thought, well, how creative. Why didn't I think of that? And they look good. You know, they both look like, okay, we're not worried about anything, which is how you want. So 2 years later, we were here, and a woman who had had 2 babies previously, and she was pretty scared. She was a very small woman. So was her husband, and they just looked like they were dry and brittle and scared, you know, pinpoint pupils, just frightened, eyes darting all around. And I thought, that baby's coming anyway. This isn't stopping her labor. But I was worried she was going to tear because she was rigid with fear. And then I thought of that couple, and I said, I waited till she wasn't having a contraction. I said, Linda, I got an idea here. Why don't you just try, you and Richard kiss each other through this next one. Let's see if that helps. She probably would have done anything that I suggested at that point other than get in the car and go to the hospital, which would have meant a very bumpy ride, and nobody wanted to do that. Okay, so she closes her eyes, puts her lip together like this, and he does the same thing, and they just mash their lips together. And I went, oh my goodness, they don't know how. But of course, you know, the rule is you can't criticize people in labor. That's the worst thing you can do. So you just wait till that one's over. And then I waited till she opened her eyes again and was ready to receive more information. And I said, if we could just try that one more time. And Linda, if this time you'll open your mouth. Right? I didn't care what Richard did. You know, it didn't matter. I wanted her mouth open because I had already noticed that when the woman's mouth is open and her jaw is relaxed, she's the woman that is much less likely to get a tear. And most women didn't get a tear at birth, so I wasn't having to learn to do stitching yet. Okay, so she did that, and guess what happened? The baby was on the perineum. And this is a bigger baby than she'd ever had, and she had an intact perineum. 25 years later, she wrote the story for me, and she said, well, our marriage was kind of in trouble because, you know, sex wasn't that great, and even though we love each other and everything. And she said that birth just fixed everything for us. She said, so now I tell my kids, you know, if they're getting pregnant, you know, don't forget, you might need to be kissing each other. And if you do it in the hospital, okay, so that's, you know, people are rightly going to feel kind of shy doing that. But I tell them it's kind of magical because if you kiss each other in the hospital, it might upset some of the nursing staff. But what they'll do is they'll bring the nicer ones to be around you, and the not so nice ones will go away. They won't be able to stand it. And, you know, I mean, if you've been together long enough to get pregnant, I'm pretty sure it's legal for you to get. There's not a law against it. It might discombobulate people, but who cares? If it helps get your baby out and saves you some stitches, that could be really quite a good thing. Now, we didn't know very much about hormones in the 70s, except that we knew a lot about hormones. We just didn't know that there were hormones involved. I worked empirically. I worked on things that I knew to be true from my own experiences and what I was able to observe. So, of course, I knew from having breastfed my first baby that something about stimulating the nipples would make the uterus contract. You know, it's just, you knew that. You didn't have to know that was oxytocin being produced, but that's exactly what's happening, isn't it? You know that the pituitary produces oxytocin, and it's a better, safer form of oxytocin than that you're going to get in the little vials, which is not human, you know, it's not derived from human sources. And it would be very difficult to stimulate too much oxytocin because to do so would hurt, you see. So you wouldn't worry, you know, you wouldn't overstimulate the breast to the point where it dumped too much oxytocin to the point of, say, rupturing the uterus, which is, of course, something that can happen when you get it from the vial or from the drip. So that's why you have to regulate that very closely, and different people have different tolerances according to, to what is given by injection or drip. So if we wanted to get a labor going, well, what breast stimulation, of course. So we knew that, and the same thing, if you wanted the uterus to contract after having a baby, well, best thing is to have the baby in the arms and held at the breast. Whether or not the baby is actually sucking, just the presence at the breast makes mother emit oxytocin. So there's one that save money, you don't have to pay for it. You just take it from the chemical plant of the mother. But what we didn't know is also that your own body produces opiate. Do you know that? And that would be then what? Endorphin, exactly. And of course, sports medicine people are very well aware of this. If you have an injured athlete, and so this person is now out in the game the first time, and they're playing well, and it's getting exciting. You've got somebody watching from the field, or from the bench, from the sidelines, being very careful that this person isn't getting injured and not know it, because in the thrill of the game and the exertion and so forth, can get you so pumped up with opiate that you could be injured and not know it, because it's so effective. And so that's what we get. We learn how to get opiate working for us. And you do that also by laughing. Okay? Laughing, expressions of love can do it, because oxytocin and opiate work very nicely together, the endorphin and oxytocin. But oxytocin and the catecholamines, the adrenaline-like compounds, are antagonistic. And so that's the one that will close down labor. Okay, so now we get to what I call sphincter law. And sphincter law is not something that we ever talked about here. But let me tell you, if you travel around the country in a school bus, you are going to have your own toilet with you, especially if you have little kids. Because you imagine every time somebody has to pee, you're going to stop the whole caravan? I don't think so. So you're a traveling outhouse, and every day you have to deal with the waste of the day, okay? And so you get so that you have a little more familiarity with the body processes than you did when you grew up in a family that has had indoor plumbing the whole time. You don't know as much about poop as people who didn't grow up that way. And so everybody here had at least a dozen years of living in an outhouse type situation too. So you could say that we did know shit.